Heavy silk clung to Selina's skin, but it was the cold, crushing weight on her left hand that forced her awake. A diamond the size of a crushed almond refracted the morning light. Panic seized her throat as she stared at the unfamiliar, cavernous bedroom. Then a low, gravelly voice broke the silence. From the doorway, "Good morning, Mrs. Flores." A man cloaked in bespoke wool stepped into the light. "Breathe, Selina. We got married last night." Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating dust motes that danced over a mattress large enough to comfortably sleep six. Selina Roundtree groaned, pressing the heels of her hands into her temples. A vicious, pounding hic drummed behind her eyes, matching the frantic rhythm of her waking heart. As she shifted, the unfamiliar, frictionless glide of expensive fabric against her thighs made her freeze. These were not her worn-out cotton pajama pants. She opened her eyes, squinting against the blinding daylight, and looked down. She was wearing a pearl-white silk nightgown, edged in delicate French lace. It was tailored perfectly to her size 18 frame, draping over her thick thighs and wide hips with a terrifyingly intimate precision. Selina pushed herself up against a mountain of down pillows, her breath hitching as her left hand brushed against the heavy duvet. Something caught the fabric, something heavy, cold, and metallic. Selina raised her trembling left hand. Sitting snug against her ring finger was a platinum band, anchoring an emerald-cut diamond, so absurdly massive it looked like a prop from a heist movie. "What?" she croaked, her throat dry as sand. "What is this?" She scrambled backward, her back hitting the tufted velvet headboard. The bedroom was an architectural marvel. Vaulted ceilings, dark mahogany accents, and a massive marble fireplace on the opposite wall. It screamed old money and new danger. It was nothing like her cramped third-floor walk-up in Queens. "Good morning, Mrs. Flores." The voice was a low, resonant baritone that sent a shiver straight down Selina's spine. She snapped her head toward the doorway. Leaning casually against the doorframe was a man who looked like he had stepped out of a European fashion editorial and a crime syndicate's most wanted poster simultaneously. I was devastatingly tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in a charcoal grey bespoke suit without a tie. His dark hair was perfectly swept back, but it was his eyes that locked her in place, piercing, predatory, and an icy shade of hazel. Selina pulled the duvet up to her chin, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "Who are you? Where am I? Did you kidnap me?" The man pushed off the doorframe, his footsteps silent on the thick Persian rug. As he approached the bed, he carried a silver tray holding a steaming porcelain cup of coffee and 2 aspirin. He set the tray on the mahogany nightstand with agonizing slowness. "My name is Dempster Flores," he said, his tone shockingly calm, given her mounting hysteria. "You are in my home in Alpine, New Jersey, and no, Selina, I did not kidnap you. I brought my wife home." "You're... what?" The word barely made it past her lips. Dempster reached out. Selina flinched. But his large, warm hand simply wrapped around her trembling left wrist, lifting her hand so the massive diamond caught the sunlight again. "Breathe, Selina. We got married last night. You are my wife." "You're lying," she gasped, yanking her hand away. "I don't know you. I'm an accountant. I do taxes for mid-level marketing firms. I don't get blackout drunk and marry strangers." "You did last night," Dempster replied smoothly. "Drink the coffee. Take the pills. Your head must be splitting. Selina's chest heaved. The sheer absurdity of the situation clashed violently with the terrifying reality of the room, the silk on her skin, and the ring on her finger. She looked at Dempster Flores. The name tickled the back of her brain, a dark whisper from the local news. The Flores family. Shipping, real estate, and a whispered monopoly on illegal imports along the eastern seaboard. A mafia boss. "I want to leave," Selina said, her voice shaking but defiant. "I'm calling the police. I'm going to take this stupid ring off, and I am walking out that door." She tugged frantically at the platinum band, but it was perfectly sized to her plump finger. It wouldn't budge past her knuckle. Dempster watched her struggle, his expression unreadable, though a faint muscle feathered in his sharp jaw. "You can try to leave," Dempster said quietly, his voice dropping an octave. "But the guards at the gate won't open it for anyone but me." And as for the police, the marriage certificate filed at 2:02 a.m. in a private Manhattan penthouse with a state Supreme Court judge says everything was completely consensual. Because it was. Selina stopped pulling at the ring, her fingers aching. She stared at him, hot tears pricking her eyes. "Why me? Look at me. I'm nobody. I'm fat. I'm boring. I'm—" Dempster moved so fast, she didn't have time to blink. Suddenly, he was sitting on the edge of the mattress, his weight dipping the bed. He leaned in, his scent, sandalwood, dark roast coffee, and expensive leather, enveloping her. He reached out, his thumb gently brushing a stray tear from her cheek. "You are exactly what I wanted," he murmured fiercely, "and you are far from boring. Now drink the coffee. We have a lot to discuss about your ex-boyfriend, Alidoro." At the sound of Alidoro's name, a sickening jolt of nausea hit Selina's stomach. The missing pieces of last night began to violently slam into place. The memory hit Selina like a physical blow, dragging her mind back to the sprawling, crystal chandelier-lit ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria. It had been a charity gala for pediatric leukemia. Selina wouldn't have gone within a 10-mile radius of the event if Alidoro Wright hadn't practically begged her. "We need to show a united, mature front, Selina. The firm likes to see that I'm amicable with my past," he had said over the phone, his voice dripping with that patronizing corporate slickness she had once mistaken for charm. They had broken up 6 months ago, after Selina caught him sleeping with his personal trainer. A woman who spent her life counting macros while Selina enjoyed baking sourdough. Alidoro had spent their entire 2-year relationship making subtle, cutting remarks about Selina's weight, encouraging her to skip dessert or buying her dresses 2 sizes too small as motivation. Yet she had gone to the gala. She had poured her soft, generous curves into a midnight blue velvet gown that she actually felt beautiful in, hoping to prove to Alidoro and to herself that she was doing just fine without him. Instead, it was a slaughter. Alidoro had met her at the entrance with his new fiancée, a size 0 socialite named Beatrice, who looked at Selina like she was something scraped off a shoe. Within 10 minutes, Alidoro had managed to publicly humiliate Selina in front of his wealthy finance colleagues. "Selina's always had such a brave appetite," Alidoro had chuckled to a group of managing directors, gesturing to the single crab cake on her appetizer plate. "I used to tell her, 'Babe, the stock market goes up, but your scale doesn't have to follow.' But she's stubborn. Still wearing that same blue dress, I see. Velvet is very forgiving, isn't it?" The mocking laughter of the men in expensive tuxedos had echoed in Selina's ears. Humiliation had burned hot and bright in her chest, flushing her cheeks. She hadn't yelled. She hadn't thrown her drink. She had simply turned on her heel and retreated to the darkest corner of the mahogany bar, feeling every inch of her size 18 body like a glaring neon sign. That was where the drinking started. Tequila, she had told the bartender. Straight. Keep them coming until I can't remember my own name. By her fourth shot, the opulent ballroom was swimming in a blurry haze. She was leaning heavily against the brass rail of the bar, silently weeping into a cocktail napkin, wishing the floor would open up and swallow her. That was when the air in the room shifted. Selina remembered the sudden silence that swept through the nearby crowd. The arrogant finance bros parted like the Red Sea. A man took the empty stool beside her. He didn't ask. He simply claimed the space. A woman in a dress that beautiful shouldn't be crying over a man that pathetic, a deep, gravelly voice had said. Selina had turned her head slowly, her vision swimming, to find a man looking at her. It was Dempster. Even through the haze of tequila, the sheer, imposing magnetism of him had made her breath catch. He was looking at her not with pity, and certainly not with the veiled disgust Alidoro often wore. He looked at her like a starving man staring at a feast. He's an idiot, Selina had slurred, wiping her nose with the back of her hand, completely abandoning all elegance. And I'm an idiot for coming here. I'm fat, I'm out of place, and I just want a pizza. Dempster had signaled the bartender, ordering a neat scotch for himself and a glass of water for her. You are out of place, Dempster had agreed smoothly, because lions do not belong in a room full of jackals. Your body is perfect. He is just too weak to handle a woman who takes up space in the world. The validation, coming from a man so dangerously handsome, had short-circuited Selina's intoxicated brain. She remembered laughing, a bitter, broken sound. Who are you, my fairy godfather? Something like that. Tell me what you want to do to him, Selina. She had blinked, surprised he knew her name. I want to ruin him, she had whispered fiercely, the alcohol lowering every inhibition. I want to wipe that smug, skinny grin off his face. I want him to lose everything. Dempster had smiled then, a sharp, terrifying smile that promised violence. Marry me tonight, Selina. Put my ring on your finger, and I promise you, Alidoro Wright will beg for the rest of his miserable life. Selina sat up in the massive bed in the Alpine mansion, gasping for air as the memory concluded. She remembered saying yes. She remembered laughing, thinking it was an elaborate, bizarre joke. She remembered the smooth leather of a black Maybach, the blur of the city lights, the oak-paneled office of a judge who looked terrified of Dempster, and signing a piece of thick, cream-colored paper. Oh my God, Selina whispered, pressing her hands to her face. I actually did it. I married a Mafia boss to spite my ex-boyfriend. You did, Dempster said from the edge of the bed, his voice completely devoid of judgment. And it was the smartest thing you've ever done. Selina threw the duvet off her legs, her bare feet hitting the cold hardwood floor. She didn't care that the silk nightgown clung to her hips, or that her hair was a tangled mess. The panic had morphed into a desperate need for action. Action. Where are my clothes? She demanded, marching toward the heavy oak double doors of the bedroom. Burned, Dempster replied calmly, not moving from his spot on the bed. The blue velvet was beautiful, but it was tainted by his memory. Your closets are fully stocked. Everything is your exact size. Selina froze halfway to the door, whirling around to face him. "You bought me a wardrobe? While I was unconscious? Dempster, this is insane. This is kidnapping with extra steps. I am going home. I'll get an annulment. I'll tell the judge I was drunk." Dempster stood up. He moved with a predatory grace that made Selina instantly step back. He crossed the room, stopping just inches from her. She had to crane her neck to look up into his hazel eyes. Up close, the danger radiating off him was palpable, yet he didn't touch her. He just loomed, a wall of bespoke tailoring and sheer willpower. "You aren't getting an annulment, Selina, and you aren't leaving. Not yet." "You can't keep me here," she yelled, her voice echoing in the massive room. "I am protecting you," Dempster countered, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "You think last night was a random encounter? You think I just happened to sit next to the most beautiful woman in the room, out of sheer coincidence?" Selina blinked, her anger momentarily derailed by the compliment, though she quickly shoved the feeling down. "What are you talking about?" Dempster sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. "Come with me." He turned and walked out of the bedroom. Selina hesitated for a fraction of a second before following him. She trailed behind him down a sprawling, opulent hallway lined with Renaissance-style paintings and marble busts. The mansion was eerily quiet, save for the soft padding of their footsteps. She noticed two men in dark suits standing at the end of the corridor, their hands resting subtly over their jackets, where holsters undoubtedly lay. They averted their eyes respectfully as Selina passed in her nightgown. Dempster led her down a grand, sweeping staircase and into a massive, heavily fortified office. The walls were lined with leather-bound books, and a massive mahogany desk dominated the center of the room. Behind the desk, floor-to-ceiling reinforced glass looked out over a sprawling estate, dense woods, and a high stone wall topped with security cameras. Dempster walked to the desk, picked up a clear plastic evidence bag, and tossed it onto the polished wood. Inside the bag was a crumpled, slightly stained cocktail napkin from the Waldorf Astoria. "Look at it," Dempster ordered. Selina approached the desk tentatively. She peered through the plastic. On the napkin, written in a hurried, messy scrawl, were the words, "I, Alidoro Wright, sign over all rights, debts, and collateral regarding Selina Roundtree to Dempster Flores in exchange for a 30-day extension on the $5,000 debt owed to the Flores Syndicate." Beneath it was Alidoro's distinct, looping signature. Selina felt all the blood drain from her face. Her knees buckled slightly, and she had to grip the edge of the heavy desk to keep from collapsing. He sold me?" "He tried to," Dempster said, his voice laced with absolute venom. "Alidoro plays with money that isn't his. He made some very bad bets on illegal trades, using loans from my organization. I cornered him in the men's room last night before I found you. I told him his time was up. He was begging, crying on the marble floor. In a desperate bid, he offered me you." A sickening knot twisted in Selina's stomach. "Why would he offer me? We aren't even together." "Because he is a coward who views women as property," Dempster stated flatly. "He told me he had a thick, desperate ex out in the ballroom who would do anything he asked if he snapped his fingers. He said he could manipulate you into being collateral, a servant, a hostage, whatever I wanted, just to buy him time." Tears spilled over Selina's lashes, hot and humiliated. Even after they broke up, Alidoro was still finding ways to destroy her worth. "And you accepted." I took the napkin, Dempster corrected, his gaze locking onto hers, intense and unyielding. Because if I hadn't, he would have sold you to someone worse. Someone who wouldn't see your worth. But let me be perfectly clear, Selina. I do not view you as collateral. Then why did you marry me? She cried out, clutching the silk of her gown over her chest. Dempster walked around the desk, stopping right in front of her. He reached out, his large hands gently gripping her waist. The heat of his touch seeped through the thin silk, sending a confusing electric jolt through her panicked body. Because a debt to the Mafia is a dangerous thing, Dempster said softly, looking down at her softly parted lips. If Alidoro defaults, my lieutenants would have come after his assets. And according to this napkin, you are an asset. If you are just some woman, you are in danger from my own men. But if you are my wife... Dempster's grip tightened slightly, pulling her soft curves flush against his hard, muscular frame. Nobody touches the Don's wife, he whispered fiercely. Alidoro thought he was throwing you to the wolves. He didn't realize he was crowning you the queen of the pack. You are untouchable now, Selina. And as for Alidoro, his 30 days are going to be a living hell. Selina stared up into his eyes, her mind reeling. She was a size 18 accountant from Queens. She clipped coupons and watched baking shows. And now, she was married to the most dangerous man in New York, trapped in a gilded cage of silk and security, wearing a diamond that cost more than her life. She looked at the crumpled napkin, then back at the terrifying, beautiful man holding her. So, Selina breathed, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm. What happens now? A slow, dark smile spread across Dempster's face. Now, Mia Mowgli, we have breakfast. And then, we plan how to ruin him. Breakfast was served on a sprawling mahogany table in a dining room that belonged in a European palace, complete with vaulted ceilings and a crystal chandelier. Selina sat at one end, still clutching the silk robe tightly around her waist, while Dempster sat at the head, effortlessly commanding the vast space. Between them lay a culinary masterpiece: freshly baked croissants, thick-cut bacon, a decadent Gruyere quiche, and bowls of imported berries. Alidoro had always insisted on black coffee and half a grapefruit for breakfast, shooting her pointed, disappointed looks if she reached for carbohydrates. Here, Dempster calmly pushed a silver platter of warm, buttered pastries toward her. "Eat, Selina," he commanded softly, sipping his espresso. "You need your strength for today." She reached out tentatively, her massive diamond catching the light, and took a croissant. The buttery, flaky pastry practically melted on her tongue, and she closed her eyes for a brief second, savoring it. When she opened them, Dempster was watching her, his hazel eyes dark and entirely focused on her mouth. A heavy flush crept up her neck. "You said we are going to ruin him," Selina said, quickly wiping a crumb from her bottom lip. "How?" You're in the Mafia. Don't you usually just break people's kneecaps?" Dempster chuckled, a rich, dark sound that vibrated in the quiet room. "Physical violence is a last resort, reserved for men who have nothing else to lose. Alidoro Wright values his status, his wealth, and his pristine corporate image above all else. Breaking his knees would give him a brief hospital stay. Breaking his bank accounts, stripping him of his firm, and exposing him to the SEC as a fraud, that will destroy his soul." Selina swallowed hard. "And where do I fit into this?" "You are a forensic accountant," Dempster pointed out, leaning forward, resting his forearms on the table. "My men know how to launder money, but they are brutes when it comes to untangling Wall Street embezzlement. Alidoro borrowed $5 million from my syndicate, but he also stole millions from his own clients to cover his initial losses. He has hidden accounts, shell companies. I need someone who can find them. I need you." She stared at him, her heart thumping against her ribs. He wasn't asking her to hide. He wasn't treating her like a fragile, helpless captive. He was handing her the exact weapon she needed to exact her own vengeance. "If I find his hidden accounts," Selina said, her voice dropping to a serious, professional pitch she usually reserved for audits, "you can drain them." "Every single cent," Dempster confirmed, a lethal smile touching his lips. "But first you need to get dressed. Upstairs, the master suite has 2 walk-in closets. The one on the left is yours. Go." Leaving the dining room, Selina ascended the grand staircase, her bare feet silent on the plush runners. She navigated back to the massive bedroom and approached the heavy mirrored doors on the left side of the room. Taking a deep breath, she pushed them open. Her jaw physically dropped. The closet was the size of her entire queen's apartment. Soft, recessed lighting illuminated rows upon rows of high-end designer clothing. But it wasn't the quantity that left her breathless. It was the sizing. She reached out, pulling a burgundy cashmere sweater from a velvet hanger. She checked the tag. Size 18. She touched a pair of tailored, wide-leg wool trousers. Size 18. There were racks of silk blouses, custom-fitted blazers, and evening gowns in rich jewel tones, emerald, sapphire, deep plum. Colors meant to demand attention, not hide in the shadows. Tears pricked her eyes. For 2 years, Alidoro had bought her clothes in size 10s and 12s, hanging them in their shared closet as motivation. He had constantly made her feel like her body was a temporary failure, a construction zone that needed fixing before she could be presented to society. Dempster had looked at her lush, thick curves, her wide hips, and her soft stomach, and he had ordered a king's ransom of couture to drape over her exactly as she was. He didn't want her smaller. He wanted her adorned. Selina stripped off the silk nightgown and reached for a pair of high-waisted black trousers and a forest green silk blouse. As she slipped them on, she marveled at the fit. The trousers hugged her waist perfectly, while allowing her thick thighs room to move without pinching. The silk blouse draped elegantly over her heavy breasts, the color making her green eyes pop. She found a pair of black leather ankle boots, her exact size, and slipped them on. Standing in front of the full-length mirror, Selina barely recognized herself. Gone was the shrinking woman in the oversized cardigans trying to apologize for taking up space. Staring back at her was the wife of a billionaire syndicate boss. She looked wealthy. She looked dangerous. When she walked back downstairs, Dempster was waiting in the foyer. He was speaking quietly to a broad-shouldered man with a scarred jaw. As Selina descended, both men looked up. The scarred man respectfully averted his gaze immediately, stepping back. But Dempster stepped forward. His eyes swept slowly up her body, taking in the tailored fit of the trousers, the cling of the silk, and the fiery determination replacing the fear in her eyes. The raw, unfiltered hunger in his expression made Selina's breath hitch. "Perfect," Dempster murmured, his voice slightly hoarse. He offered his arm. "Are you ready to go to work, Mrs. Flores?" Selina looked at his outstretched arm. She thought of Alidoro's smug face. She thought of the cocktail napkin, treating her like a discarded poker chip. A spark of pure, unadulterated fury ignited in her chest. She looped her arm through Dempster's. "Let's go burn his life to the ground." Stepping out of the black, armored Maybach in the heart of the financial district, Selina felt the imposing weight of Dempster's world. They did not pull up to a shady warehouse or a dimly lit social club. They arrived at a towering skyscraper made of steel and glass, the headquarters of Flores International Logistics. It was the legitimate, multi-billion-dollar front for the syndicate's empire. Flanked by Dempster and two massive, silent bodyguards, Selina walked through the marble lobby. Employees in sharp suits scrambled out of their way, murmuring respectful, fearful greetings to Dempster. He ignored them all, keeping his hand possessively resting on the small of Selina's back, guiding her toward a private, biometric-secured elevator. "My cyber division is on the top floor," Dempster explained, as the elevator shot upward, making Selina's stomach drop. "We have secured a back door into Wright's corporate network. My men are good at brute-forcing firewalls, but they get lost in the ledgers. That is your domain." The doors chimed open to a sprawling, high-tech command center that looked like it belonged to a government intelligence agency. Banks of glowing monitors lined the walls, operated by men and women who looked far too intense to be standard IT support. Dempster led her to a glass-walled corner office containing a massive multi-monitor workstation. Waiting inside was a sharply dressed man with silver at his temples and a calculating gaze. "Selina, this is Leo, my underboss," Dempster introduced. Leo offered a curt, respectful nod. "A pleasure, Mrs. Flores. We have Wright's primary server mirrored on this terminal. 10 years of his firm's financial history, personal accounts, and encrypted offshore routing numbers. It's a mess of dummy corporations." Selina sat in the plush leather ergonomic chair. As she touched the keyboard, a familiar, comforting calm washed over her. Numbers made sense. Numbers didn't lie, cheat, or call her names. She pulled up the first spreadsheet, her eyes scanning the data with practiced speed. For the next 4 hours, the room fell into a tense, focused silence. Selina worked like a surgeon, cross-referencing Alidoro's massive business expense accounts with dummy shell companies registered in the Cayman Islands. Dempster stood silently behind her the entire time, an immovable mountain of support, occasionally ordering one of the bodyguards to fetch her water or a fresh cup of tea. "He's sloppy," Selina murmured, her fingers flying across the mechanical keyboard. "He thinks he's a genius, but he's using standard layered transactions to move client funds. Look at this." She pointed to a series of wire transfers on the screen. "He's skimming 2% off every portfolio over $10 million and funneling it into a holding company called Apex Holdings. But Apex doesn't exist. It's a ghost LLC." Leo leaned in, genuinely impressed. "We spent 3 days trying to track those missing funds. You found it in 4 hours. Because he hid it in plain sight, disguised as management fees," Selina said, her confidence surging. "If we trace the routing number from Apex," she typed furiously, running a search through the offshore database Leo had provided. "Got it. A private bank account in Zurich. Balance $12 million. Dempster's hand clamped down on her shoulder, his grip tight with dark satisfaction. "Can you access the Zurich account? Give me 10 minutes and the clearance to bypass their dual authentication," Leo said, stepping up to the keyboard alongside her. As Leo worked his digital magic, a sudden, jarring sound shattered the intense focus in the room. It was a cell phone ringing. Selina frowned, realizing the sound was coming from Dempster's jacket pocket. Dempster pulled out a sleek, rose-gold smartphone with a cracked screen. Selina gasped. It was her phone, the one she had left in her clutch at the Waldorf Astoria last night. Dempster glanced at the caller ID, his jaw instantly locking into a rigid line. His eyes darkened to a terrifying, violent shade. He placed the phone on the desk, face up. The screen read, "Alidoro." "Answer it," Dempster commanded, his voice deadly quiet. "Put him on speaker. Let's see what a desperate rat sounds like." Selina's hand trembled slightly as she reached for the phone. She hit the green icon and tapped the speaker button, plunging the room into absolute silence. "Selina, finally!" Alidoro's voice blasted through the speaker, frantic, sweaty, and dripping with his usual patronizing entitlement. "Where the hell are you? I've been calling your apartment all morning. You weren't at work. Listen to me. I need you to come to my place right now." Selina swallowed hard, finding her voice. "Alidoro? What do you want?" "I need a favor," Alidoro said, his words rushing together in a panicked blur. "Last night at the gala, things got complicated. I made a deal with some very bad people. I told them you were my collateral. It was just a stall tactic, but I swear. But they are going to come looking for you." Selina looked up at Dempster. The Mafia boss was staring at the phone like he wanted to crush it into dust, his fists clenched at his sides. "Why would you do that, Alidoro?" Selina asked, keeping her voice deceptively level. "Because I had no choice," Alidoro snapped, his temper flaring. "Look, you owe me. I put up with your lazy habits and your weight issues for 2 years. You're going to come to my apartment, and when these guys show up, you are going to tell them you belong to me, and you'll work off my debt. You're an accountant. Maybe they need someone to do their books. It's temporary, Selina. Just do this for me." The sheer, staggering audacity of the man left Selina breathless. He had sold her out to a mob boss, and now he was trying to manipulate her into willingly walking into the slaughterhouse to save his own skin. He truly believed she was that pathetic, that desperate for his approval. Selina felt a shift inside her. The last remnants of the insecure, broken-hearted woman vanished, replaced by a cold, hardened rage. She leaned closer to the microphone. "Alidoro," Selina said smoothly. "Just get a cab, Selina. I don't have time to coddle you right now. Shut up and listen to me," she snapped, her voice cracking like a whip. The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. Alidoro was clearly shocked. She had never raised her voice to him before. "I am looking at the Apex Holdings ledger," Selina said, her voice dripping with ice. "I am looking at the $12 million you stole from the Watson, Miller, and Hayes portfolios. I am looking at the Zurich routing number." "What?" Alidoro gasped, the air completely leaving his lungs. How do you know about that?" "Selina, where are you?" "I am exactly where you sent me, Alidoro." Selina smiled, a vicious, predatory expression she didn't know she possessed. "I'm with the Flores Syndicate, but I'm not doing their books to pay off your debt. I'm doing their books to drain yours." "Selina, no, wait. You have 30 days, Alidoro," Selina interrupted, mimicking Dempster's lethal tone perfectly. "But by the time I'm done with these servers, you won't have 30 cents. Enjoy the SEC investigation." She reached out and tapped the red button. Cutting off Alidoro's panicked scream, the glass-walled office was dead silent. Selina slowly exhaled, her chest heaving, the adrenaline rushing through her veins like liquid fire. She looked up. Leo was staring at her with wide eyes, a look of profound respect crossing his hardened features. But it was Dempster who took her breath away. The Mafia boss was looking down at her, not with anger, but with an expression of pure, unadulterated awe. He looked at her like she was a goddess of war who had just descended from the heavens. Dempster stepped forward, bracing his hands on the arms of her chair. Trapping her against the desk, he leaned in until his lips were a millimeter from her ear, the heat of his breath sending shivers down her spine. "Remind me," Dempster whispered roughly, his hazel eyes burning into hers. "Never to cross you, Mrs. Flores." Selina tilted her chin up, meeting his dangerous gaze without flinching. "Just make sure Leo drains that Zurich account by noon, Mr. Flores. I want him ruined before lunch." Dempster threw his head back and laughed, a loud, joyous sound that echoed through the cyber division. He grabbed the back of her chair, spinning her around, and before Selina could register what was happening, he leaned down and captured her lips in a bruising, passionate kiss. It tasted of expensive coffee, raw power, and absolute victory. And for the first time in her life, Selina kissed back, entirely unafraid of taking up space. The kiss was a collision of worlds. Selina had spent her entire adult life making herself small, apologizing for the space she occupied, and accepting crumbs of affection from a man who treated her like a burden. But here, in the nerve center of a criminal empire, Dempster kissed her as if she were the only oxygen left in the room. His hands, large and warm, slid down her back to grip her wide hips, pulling her flush against him. There was no hesitation, no holding back, just a raw, all-consuming claim. When they finally broke apart, Selina was breathless, her chest heaving against the silk of her emerald blouse. Her lips were swollen, and her pulse was a frantic drumbeat in her ears. She looked up at Dempster, half expecting to see regret or the usual cold, calculating mask of a syndicate boss. Instead, his hazel eyes were burning with a fierce, possessive warmth. "The Zurich account is empty, boss." Leo's voice cut through the heavy silence, laced with a rare thread of amusement. He hadn't even looked up from the monitors. $12 million successfully rotated through our Caribbean shell companies and scrubbed clean. Apex Holdings is officially bankrupt. Dempster didn't take his eyes off Selina as he answered. "Good. Now we bury him." Selina stepped back, her mind snapping back to the brilliant, dangerous reality of what they were doing. The adrenaline was a potent drug, washing away the last lingering shadows of her insecurities. She turned back to the workstation, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. "Taking his hidden money is just the beginning," Selina said, her voice steady and sharp. "Alidoro built his entire identity on his reputation. He thinks he's untouchable because he works for a prestigious firm. We need to shatter the illusion. If we just leave him broke, he'll find a way to con someone else into bailing him out. We have to make him radioactive." Dempster moved to stand beside her, crossing his arms over his broad chest. "What do you suggest, Mia Mowgli?" The Italian term of endearment sent a fresh shiver down her spine, but she leaned into the screen. "I'm going to compile a comprehensive dossier. Every illicit transfer, every dummy corporation, every forged signature he used to siphon client funds. I have the digital trail linking his IP address to the offshore accounts. We don't just send this to the SEC. Bureaucracy takes too long. We send it to his senior partners, the firm's compliance board, and the top financial journalists at the Wall Street Journal. Leo grinned, a shark-like expression that transformed his scarred face. I can set up anonymous encrypted relays. The emails will bounce off servers in Russia and South America before they hit New York. Untraceable. Do it, Dempster ordered. For the next 2 hours, they worked in a synchronized, lethal harmony. Selina meticulously packaged the evidence, translating the complex forensic accounting into plain, damning language that even a layman could understand. She highlighted how Alidoro had specifically targeted the retirement portfolios of elderly clients, a detail that made her stomach churn with disgust, but hardened her resolve. When the dossier was complete, Leo hit the execution command. Sent, Leo announced, leaning back in his chair. The board of directors at Wright's firm just received the Friday surprise of a lifetime. The SEC whistleblower tip line has the full package, and 3 senior reporters have exclusive scoops in their inboxes. Selina exhaled a long, shaky breath, suddenly feeling the weight of the morning. It was barely noon, and she had dismantled a man's life. Dempster's hand settled on the nape of her neck, his thumb drawing slow, soothing circles against her skin. You did flawlessly, Selina. Now we wait for the avalanche. They didn't have to wait long. Dempster escorted her to a private, luxurious lounge down the hall, complete with plush leather sofas and a massive flat-screen television tuned to a financial news network. He poured her a glass of sparkling water, his demeanor shifting from the ruthless mob boss to the fiercely attentive husband. He sat beside her, his thigh pressing comfortably against her thick leg, offering a grounding, physical reassurance. An hour later, the breaking news banner flashed across the bottom of the screen. Breaking: major Wall Street firm halts trading. Amidst massive embezzlement scandal, Senior VP Alidoro Wright implicated in multi-million-dollar fraud. The newscaster's voice filled the room, detailing the anonymous leak that had exposed a web of deceit, offshore accounts, and stolen client funds. Footage showed federal agents in blue windbreakers swarming the glass doors of Alidoro's corporate headquarters, carrying out boxes of hard drives and documents. Selina watched, mesmerized, as the camera panned to a live shot of Alidoro being escorted out of the building in handcuffs. His bespoke suit was rumpled, his hair disheveled, and his face pale and slick with panicked sweat. He looked pathetic. He looked small. He didn't look like the man who had tormented her for 2 years, criticizing her portions and making her feel unworthy of love. He was just a thief who got caught. He's ruined, Selina whispered, almost unable to believe her own eyes. Complete and total destruction, Dempster agreed, sipping a glass of scotch. His firm will disavow him. The feds will freeze whatever legitimate assets he has left. Beatrice, his lovely size 0 fiancée, will undoubtedly abandon ship before dinner, and he still owes my syndicate $5 million. Selina turned to look at Dempster, a sudden realization dawning on her. If his assets are frozen by the federal government, how do you get your $5 million back? A slow, devastating smirk spread across Dempster's handsome face. I don't care about the 5, Selina. The money is irrelevant. But you're a businessman. You run a syndicate. You don't just write off millions of dollars. Dempster set his glass down on the glass coffee table and shifted his body so he was fully facing her. The intensity in his hazel eyes pinned her to the leather sofa. I have enough money to buy and sell this city 3 times over, Dempster said quietly. Alidoro's debt was never about the cash. It was about leverage. It was about finding a way to him, and by extension, finding a way to you. Selina frowned, her brow furrowing in confusion. What do you mean? You met me last night at the gala. No, Selina, Dempster corrected gently, reaching out to trace the line of her jaw. I met you last night. But I have known who you are for 6 months. Selina stared at him, the air stalling in her lungs. 6 months? But how? We travel in completely different circles. I barely leave Queens unless I have to. Dempster sighed, a heavy, rich sound, and leaned back slightly, though he kept his hand resting on her knee. Alidoro was a mark. When a Wall Street VP comes to my people looking for a $5 million off-the-books loan to cover bad crypto bets, we do our due diligence. I had my cyber team dig into his life, his firm, his accounts, his personal relationships. He paused, his eyes darkening with a memory. In doing so, we accessed his work computer, saw the portfolios he was managing. Only, I realized very quickly that Alidoro wasn't managing them at all. He was a charismatic idiot. The brilliant restructuring, the flawless tax mitigation, the deep forensic audits. They were all done by someone else. Someone operating from a laptop in Queens, sending him the completed files every night at 2:12 a.m. Selina felt a blush creep up her neck. I helped him. When we were together, he said he was overwhelmed. I did his heavy lifting so he could secure his promotion. I thought I was being a supportive girlfriend. You were being a genius, Dempster said fiercely. I started reading your work, your mind, Selina. It's extraordinary. I watched through the digital footprint as he took credit for your brilliance, securing his VP title while you stayed in a cramped apartment doing taxes for MLMs. I had Leo dig deeper. I saw the security footage from the lobby of your apartment building. I saw you. Dempster leaned in close, his voice dropping to a gravelly whisper. I saw a woman with curves that belonged in Renaissance paintings, with a mind sharp enough to dismantle a fortune, settling for a man who didn't deserve to breathe her air. It infuriated me. Tears, hot and fast, welled in Selina's eyes. For years, she had felt invisible, discarded, because she didn't fit into the narrow, rigid beauty standards of Alidoro's world. And here was this terrifying, powerful man, admitting he had watched her from the shadows and seen nothing but a queen. When I found out he had dumped you for some socialite, I decided to call in his debt early. Dempster continued. I knew he couldn't pay. I cornered him at the gala, intending to break him. But then, I saw you at the bar, in that blue velvet dress. Dempster's breath hitched slightly, a rare show of vulnerability from a man made of steel. You were crying, and I realized I didn't just want to ruin him. I wanted to claim you. I wanted to put a ring on your finger so heavy you could never forget who you belonged to, and give you the power to burn his world, to ash yourself. A tear slipped down Selina's cheek, and Dempster caught it with his thumb. I was drunk, she whispered, her voice trembling. I didn't know what I was agreeing to. I know, Dempster said softly. And if, after today, you want to walk away, I will grant you an annulment. I will give you half of the 12 million we took from Zurich as a parting gift, and you will never see me again. You are free, Selina. You are not collateral. You are my wife, but only if you choose to be. Selina sat in the quiet luxury of the lounge, the heavy platinum and diamond ring catching the ambient light. She looked at the television, where Alidoro was being shoved into the back of a federal vehicle, his life over. She had done that. With Dempster's backing, she had stopped being a victim and became the architect of her own justice. She looked at the man beside her. He was dangerous, ruthless, and lived in a world steeped in shadows. But he had looked at her body and seen perfection. He had looked at her mind and seen a weapon. He had given her an empire and asked for nothing but her presence. An annulment. Selina tested the word, letting it roll off her tongue. She looked down at her thick thighs, clad in the perfectly tailored trousers he had provided, and then up into his waiting, guarded eyes. "If I leave," Selina said slowly, a small, daring smile playing on her lips. "Who is going to audit the syndicate's offshore accounts? Leo is brilliant with routing numbers, but your tax mitigation strategy on those Caribbean shell companies is a disaster waiting to happen." Dempster blinked, the tension bleeding out of his broad shoulders as the implication of her words settled in. A slow, devastating grin broke across his face, lighting up his hazel eyes. "You think you can do better?" he challenged, his voice thick with desire. "I know I can," Selina countered, shifting her weight so she was straddling his lap. The bold move surprised even her, but the silk of her blouse slipped against his suit jacket, and he instantly wrapped his large hands around her waist, holding her securely. "I'm not a trophy wife, Dempster," she whispered, leaning down until her lips were a breath away from his. "I don't sit on the sidelines. If I wear this ring, I'm a partner in everything." "Mia Regina," Dempster murmured, the reverence in his voice unmistakable. "My queen." I would have it no other way. When he kissed her this time, it wasn't a sudden collision. It was a slow, deliberate worship. He tasted of power and permanence, his hands mapping the soft, generous curves of her hips and back, as if memorizing a sacred text. Selina tangled her fingers in his dark hair, kissing him back with a fierce, possessive hunger she had suppressed for far too long. A sudden, sharp knock on the lounge door forced them apart. Dempster growled low in his throat, his eyes flashing with annoyance as he looked toward the frosted glass. "What?" he barked. Leo opened the door a crack, expertly keeping his eyes focused on the ceiling to give them privacy. "Apologies, boss, but we just got a call from the front gate at the Alpine estate. It seems Alidoro Wright made bail. He bypassed his apartment and took a cab straight to your gates. He's screaming for Selina, demanding to see his collateral." Selina felt a jolt of shock, quickly followed by a cold, settling calm. She didn't feel fear. The very mention of Alidoro's name used to make her anxious, worried about her weight, her clothes, her worth. Now he was just a bug buzzing against a reinforced glass window. She slid off Dempster's lap, smoothing down her silk blouse. She looked at her husband. "He really doesn't know when to quit, does he?" Selina asked. Dempster stood up, buttoning his suit jacket, his eyes locked onto hers with deadly pride. "He is a slow learner. Would you like my men to dispose of him?" "No," Selina said, turning toward the door, the heavy diamond on her finger flashing brilliantly. "I want to do it. Let's go home, Dempster. It's time I formally introduce myself to my ex-boyfriend as Mrs. Flores." They left the skyscraper together, a united front of beauty, brains, and brutal power. The black Maybach waited at the curb, ready to take them back to the sprawling mansion in Alpine. As they drove out of the city, Selina looked out the tinted window at the passing skyline. She had woken up that morning terrified, trapped in silk, and wearing a stranger's ring. But as Dempster reached over, intertwining his large, warm fingers with hers, she realized the truth. She hadn't been kidnapped. She had been rescued. And in the process of burning down her past, she had found a kingdom that fit her perfectly. Did Selina's ultimate revenge on her toxic ex give you absolute chills? Drop A in the comment if you loved seeing our gorgeous, curvy queen take her power back and claim her Mafia throne. We absolutely swooned over Dempster Flores and how he worshipped her exactly as she is. If you want more dramatic, romantic, and empowering stories full of twists, make sure you hit that like button. Share this story with a friend who loves a good revenge plot. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more incredible real-life storytelling.